Hey guys, I want to start this out by apologizing because I absconded kind of for a couple of weeks with the holidays all falling on Thursdays and Fridays and family being around. I didn't have much time to do recording, so I appreciate your patience. Let's get right into the story. Tales from a Rural Police Officer, Part 5, The Ouija Fence. Thank you all for the love, guys. I have to say, the outpourings of positive words have helped me a lot. The thoughts of how my hellish experiences have brought joy to others, even for just a few moments a day, well, that's an amazing feeling. Lately, I've not had much to be happy about. When I decided to share my stories, I had no idea they would be this popular. I just thought it would be good for my mental health to get these out there. I mean, I guess I was right, but still, wow. Anyway, for today's tale from a rural police officer, I shall recount a case I had, until very recently, completely forgotten about. I had blocked out these memories and I was happy never to think of them. That is, until a commenter mentioned a trip to a cemetery. I remembered the time I was forced to clean up some teenagers out of a cast iron fence that surrounded a local cemetery. So, without delay, let us begin. It was my very first case as a solo operating patrol officer. The year was 1966, it was April 24th, and I just finished my training, as well as the 3 months of riding with the senior officer. I was young, dumb, and entirely too eager to be a solo policeman. It had always been a dream of mine to be a cop, and I felt like I achieved my lifelong dream. I had just been given my first cruiser, and I was actually detailing it in the driveway of my rental, when the radio crackled to life, alerting me to my first call. My first solo call.
Car 78, come in. Over.
Dispatch, this is Car 78. Over.
Car 78, we've received several calls about noises and commotion at the premise of the cemetery. I need you to roll out and investigate, ride and report. Oh, and congratulations on making the force. Over.
I anxiously backed my boat of a cruiser out of my driveway, and I started the 20-mile drive to the cemetery. The roads were pretty empty for a Saturday morning, and the trip didn't take long. When I got within sight of the cemetery, I stopped and listened to the sound. I could hear some people talking and laughing, as well as the sound of rocks rubbing together. Big rocks. That deep, rumbly sound, with accents of bass. And some sounds I can only think of as what the fuck sounds. I proceeded to drive up the gravel driveway to the gates that led to the graves. I exited my car and I started to look around. I noticed that somebody had brought a fold-away card table into the cemetery, and that the table had been set up in front of a very large old headstone. I walked a little bit closer to inspect. I began to notice things as I approached, like the candles melted onto the table, and the Ouija board that was also on the table. I called out, hoping to garner the attention of whoever was there. "Hello, County Sheriffs, I need to talk to you. Can you please step out?" I was greeted with silence. I thought maybe I heard a small chuckle from somewhere in the cemetery, but I wasn't sure. The sound of rocks rubbing together has intensified. I walked further into the cemetery. Again, I announced myself as I was trained to do. As I tried to communicate with whoever was up there, I started to get that feeling of, like, impending doom. You know the feeling, right? That feeling that something bad, really bad, is getting ready to happen. There's nothing you could do to abate the feeling either. This wasn't good. I knew things were about to go shit show sideways, but there was not a fucking thing I could do about it. I drew my service weapon and swept the nearby area for activity. I wasn't able to see anybody, but I did get a feeling that I was being watched. I decided to walk toward the back of the graveyard, where the oldest graves were. I stopped under a large willow tree in the shade. I scanned my surroundings. I was now starting to have cold sweats and a feeling of intense vertigo. I stumbled into the sunlight again, and I walked to the south corner of the place. Oh my god. What the actual fuck? There was something in, on, under, and through the cast iron fence in the back corner. I didn't immediately recognize what I was seeing, so I had to approach and inspect the situation. I wish I hadn't. I still think about the whole scenario, and it opened me up to the rest of the wild and crazy shit that happened to me while I was an officer. I was about 3 feet from the fence when the smell got me. The smell of someone's insides being, well, outside. It was an awful, awful scent, and one that you will never forget. I had been with the senior officer when we found a body that had been through a hay baler, and I knew the scent, so I walked closer, careful not to step on any, evidence. That's when I realized what I was seeing. Someone, or multiple someones, had been flipped inside out and slammed against the cast iron fence. Their clothing was in tatters, mixed in with bits of bone and tangled meat that was, well, at one point, a human body. Bits of bone and teeth sprinkled the mess like stars in the night sky. I didn't see a single piece of bone bigger than about an inch long or an inch wide. Something had nearly pulverized these people or person. I decided that since I hadn't received my portable radio yet, I would walk the perimeter and search for survivors or clues. As I made my way to the car to radio back to dispatch, on my short journey, I discovered 3 more scenes of gore, one in each cardinal direction from the center of the cemetery, each as disturbing as disgusting as the first. I finally made my way to the car and I called out for the coroner, but I was told, "Sorry, 76, the coroner won't come out to do graveyard retrievals. He will show up, but he will not cross the cemetery lines. He says he sees enough death without visiting its home, so you'll have to collect the bodies." Something like that. "Great, send some barrels. There's not much left. Also, evidence bags." Dispatch agreed and all was silent again. I remembered the table and the board, so that's where I went. I noticed that there was a sheet of paper there with some words written on it. From memory, I can only remember some of them, but they should be enough to fill in the gaps and answer some of your questions. Food, death, hate, race, filth, die, 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 not, welcome, danger, leave, peace, not, here, death awaits. I was of the mind that people playing with the board had written the words that they got from the board. I know that a lot of people will refuse to believe that these things work, but they do. And they're dangerous, especially if they're not used right. Even an idiot knows that using one in a graveyard is a stupid idea. See, Ouija boards aren't inherently good or evil. They have no filter that selects out just good or neutral spirits. They communicate with any and all spirits around. As in, they talk to everything. Sometimes, all an evil entity needs to cross over to the world is, well, a little attention. Cemeteries are powerful places. Add kids and a Ouija board, and you have a recipe for death and disaster. The coroner arrived shortly after I radioed in, and he began to tell me a little bit about the history of the cemetery. The oldest grave here doesn't even have a stone. It's an unmarked grave, containing an evil and nasty man-child. Theodore Dubois. He was a nasty plantation owner back in the county, before it was even a county, when the area was still unclaimed. It had home to all types of nasty people. Outlaws, murderers, and people suspected of witchcraft. Teddy here, well, he was a little bit of all three. He had been chased out of the Northern Territories and settled here after he discovered the unique properties of the land around here. In the early 1800s, he started to sell his services out as a land magician. He claimed to have a direct connection to black magic, and he sold his spells and curses to other people just as evil as himself. In the year 1824, Teddy here sold a curse to a man. The man had his eyes on a holy man's daughter, but the young lady wanted nothing to do with him. Theodore sold the man a hex or whatever, and eventually, shit got wild. The preacher died in his sleep. The money he saved up was never found. The livestock died and the well dried up. The poor girl had nothing left. Before she went with a man like that, she took her own life. After her suicide, the man who bought the curse got angry, blamed old Theo here for the death of his crush, came after him one night during a storm. He wound up getting himself killed, but enough people were talking now. A lynch mob formed, and they strung up the witch man from a willow tree. The coroner pointed at the willow tree in the cemetery. He continued. This used to be his yard. The flat spot there, that was his plantation. The town folks left the body in the tree for about a week before digging a hole and cutting the rope, just letting him drop into his new home. They decided not to honor the man with a memory, and the only place his name is listed is in the courthouse records, as a way of keeping people from digging him up while burying someone else. People have claimed that he haunts the cemetery here, and since the cast iron fence closes the place off, he can't get out without a body. Unfortunately for him, he can't take a body from an unwilling host. So, this is what happens. He tries to take one by force, and the body is destroyed. So, you're telling me a ghost did this? I asked. No, I'm telling you a very dark and very evil entity did this. This isn't the first time, and it probably won't be the last. As long as kids keep coming here to play with those damn spirit boards, they'll keep dying. I managed to clean the remainder of the scene while the coroner droned on and on about the dark practices that have happened here, and how the area is a hotbed for otherworldly beings and happenings. He then told me that if I were lucky, they would leave me alone, but he believed this was an omen. So that's how I came to understand just how big of a deal it was to play with a talking board in a graveyard. I cleaned those kids out of the fence and we couldn't identify them from what was left. We had to wait for their parents to report them missing. When they did report him missing, the entire police force was disturbed to learn that it had been only two teenagers, a boy of 17 and a young woman of 19. They had been going around playing with this Ouija board in all the local spooky spots, including cemeteries. That thing, or something, tore those two kids into 4 messes. Please, folks, don't use a Ouija board anywhere, let alone a cemetery. Today's tale was gonna be about the finger plants that were cursed within a tobacco crop. They never grew beyond fingers, so it's a little bit different than what transpired at that remote gas station, but similar enough that I was worried about posting it because people may get offended or think I'm trying to copy a popular gas station tale, which I'm not. So, should I post the finger plant story, or should I just find another tale to tell? Let me know what you think. I just want to say thank you to all the lovely patrons currently listed on screen right now. Dan R, Neophyte Games, Chaos X, JY, Pyromancer, Hayden MH, Ethan A, Daniel H, Maximilian Charles P, GoGo Q Puppy LLC, Young Sykes, Dark Side of the Bear, Revnik, Paul T, Mr. Swiston, and Sarcastic B. Guys, thank you all so much. And again, you help keep this channel alive.